What if the greatest danger to your faith isn't doubt, but demanding proof on your own terms? That's exactly what the Pharisees did to Jesus in Mark chapter 8, verses 11 through 13. Let's read verse 11 from the ESV. The Pharisees came and began to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven to test him. Some Pharisees, the most conservative and orthodox Jews of the time, sought out Jesus and started to argue with him. About what? Mark doesn't say what they argued about, only these two things. 1, they demanded a sign from heaven, and 2, it was to test him. What can we conclude from those two things? If they want a sign from heaven, they are not interested in what he has to say, or even what others say about what Jesus has done. They want him to do something, in their presence, that can only be explained by heavenly intervention. And, Mark says, it's a test. A test of what? Many people, including Jesus, are saying he's the Messiah. They want him to prove he's who he says he is, with a miracle, on demand, so it can't be explained away. Here's an interesting note. The word translated test here has appeared in Mark's Gospel before, back in chapter 1, verse 8, when Satan tested Jesus in the wilderness. Is Mark's use of the same word telling his readers that the Pharisees are acting devilishly? Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, on to verse 12. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why does this generation seek a sign? Truly, I say to you, no sign will be given to this generation." Look at how Jesus reacted. He sighed deeply. The Greek word is literally, he groaned up, like he groaned from a deep place. How deep? Mark said he groaned up in his spirit. So, not just a sigh from the lungs, but an expression of frustration or disappointment from deep in his spirit. Their demand has really stirred something in Jesus. Look at what he said to them. Why does this generation seek a sign? Truly, I say to you, no sign will be given to this generation. He referred to them as this generation twice. What does that mean? Is it significant? Yes, it is. In the Old Testament, the word generation was used to describe God's people during particular times of stubborn unbelief, especially the wilderness generation that Moses led out of Egypt in the Exodus. Let's look at a few quick examples. Here's Deuteronomy 32, verse 20. And he said, "I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end will be, for they are a perverse generation, children in whom is no faithfulness." How about Psalm 95:10? "For 40 years I loathed that generation and said, they are a people who go astray in their heart, and they have not known my ways." 40 years is how long the Hebrews wandered in the wilderness because they kept failing to trust God. Finally, Deuteronomy 32:5. They have dealt corruptly with him. They are no longer his children because they are blemished. They are a crooked and twisted generation. The wilderness generation saw countless signs and wonders from God, like the 10 plagues that initiated the Exodus, the parting of the Red Sea, bread from heaven, water from the rock, and the list goes on. But they kept refusing to believe God was with them, and they kept seeking other things. Now the Pharisees come to Jesus, who has healed the sick, opened the ears of the deaf, cleansed lepers, fed multitudes, and raised the dead, and they say, "Show us a sign from heaven to prove who you are." There have been plenty of signs in Mark's Gospel, but the Pharisees still stubbornly disbelieve. So Jesus said, "Truly, I say to you," as if he was swearing an oath, "no sign will be given to this generation." It's like saying two things. First, Jesus will not perform on demand, and second, if they're not convinced by the things that Jesus has done already, they won't be convinced by whatever he does now. Remember, they only asked as a test. They're not here to believe, but to disprove. Let's wrap up with verse 13. And he left them, got into the boat again, and went to the other side. After Jesus said they would get no sign, he walked away from them and left the area. Remember what Jesus told the 12 apostles when he sent them out 2 by 2? If the people of an area reject your message, shake the dust off your shoes and leave. So, Jesus left the Pharisees behind and went elsewhere. What can we take away from these 3 verses? They remind me of an old joke. A preacher gets caught in a flash flood. A man in a canoe paddles up to him and says, "Get in, preacher." But the preacher says, "No, I have faith in the Lord. He will save me." The waters kept rising, and the preacher was up on his balcony when a man in a motorboat pulled up. "Hop in, preacher. We need to get out of here. The levee's gonna break any minute." Again, the preacher says, "I shall remain. The Lord will see me through." After the levee breaks, the preacher is swept away and is treading water. A helicopter descends out of the clouds, and a state trooper calls down to him through a megaphone. "Grab the ladder, preacher. This is your last chance." But the preacher insists the Lord will deliver him. The preacher drowns, and when he arrives in heaven, he says to God, "Lord, I had unwavering faith in you. Why didn't you deliver me from that flood?" God shakes his head and says, "What did you want from me? I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter." Jesus was doing incredible and miraculous things with countless witnesses. But that wasn't enough for the Pharisees. They wanted a bespoke miracle, just for them, on demand. We can be at risk of missing God's activity in the world and in our lives because we're waiting for Him to do what we want, how and when we want it. That's risky business. In our next video, the disciples are at risk of becoming just like the Pharisees. Thanks for watching So What Scripture. I hope you'll share this video with a friend.